Popular unrest continues in Ecuador as President Lenin Moreno aims to push through major reforms and set the country on a centrist economic path after almost a decade of socialist policies. The protests have now become the worst that the country has seen in the last decade. Indigenous groups in Ecuador have joined the protests, and this should worry President Moreno. Before his predecessor Rafael Correa came to power in 2007, indigenous-led protests toppled 3 presidents. With emergency powers under his belt for 2 months, Moreno has started to crack down on protesters. Over 20 shopkeepers were arrested for overcharging for onions, carrots and corns, vegetables that are subject to price control. Protesters have been burning tires and shouting slogans such as "Down with the government." Roadblocks erected by the protesters blocked an ambulance, leading to the death of a man in the Azue province. Security forces have responded to the violence by firing tear gas. Moreno has the support of the military and the business community for his austerity measures, but his popular support has come down to a mere 30% as compared to a comfortable 70% at the time of his election win. As its fiscal deficit mounted, Ecuador was forced to sign a $4.2 billion loan with the IMF. The deal requires Ecuador to introduce major reforms. Now, Moreno is hoping to save $1.5 billion annually from ending the fuel subsidies. At least 8 people have been killed in clashes between Iraqi security forces and anti-government protesters. The death toll now stands at 100 after 6 days of unrest, with more than 6,000 people injured. Now, this even as Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi has pledged reforms in a bid to pacify angry protesters. The Iraqi government has announced a series of reforms in an effort to restore peace. The announcements were made after a special overnight cabinet session was called in light of the anti-government protests. The cabinet has issued a decree including 17 planned reforms. This covers areas such as land distribution and increased welfare stipends for those in need. To address rising unemployment, the government has talked about creating large market complexes and increased government benefits for those without work. The government has officially designated those killed in the protests as martyrs and granted special benefits to their families. The Iraqi Human Rights Commission has put the death toll at 99, while almost 4,000 people wounded since the protests kicked off on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the United Nations has also taken note of the situation and condemned the violence. The UN's head of assistance mission for Iraq has called upon all parties to pause and reflect and to hold people accountable for the reported deaths.